motion to convene into open session?
So moved.
Second.
All right. We are now.
You gotta actually have a vote.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Has that been consent agenda? No. We did that. Okay. Public appearances. The time allotted usually is 15 minutes with 3 minutes for a person, so we do have 7. So I will allow all 7 to speak tonight, but please stay within your 3 minutes. Also, it's a little crowded in here. We don't have the expansion wall, so if you'd like to go out there in the big area, we'll be on TV out there as well. Okay, so first person is Chrissy Frontier.
Good evening. My name is Christy Frontier. I've been a science teacher at the high school for the past 14 years. I'm also the proud parent of a kindergartner at Winnequa School this year. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity this evening to speak, as well as the opportunity I had a few weeks ago to speak to the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee. I'd like to speak this evening to the proposal that we brought forth to change the format of our freshman and sophomore science and English courses at the high school, which are currently tracked, to hopefully be non-tracked in the upcoming future. This course change supports the district strategic plan that was adopted in July of 2016. And as part of that district strategic plan, the district agreed to guarantee equitable opportunity, access, and outcomes for students. And our proposed change aims to align with this part of the strategic plan. We do understand that with big changes come questions and concerns, and this proposal has brought forth many questions and concerns among parents and community members, many of which I'm sure you've already heard. I would like to also bring these questions and concerns to your attention today, and I'd like to address the 2 main ones that I've heard. One of the things that seems to be a concern for parents is that we are going to take away honors. And we are not taking away honors from any of our students. What we are doing is providing something that's more equitable. Equity does not mean taking things away from anybody. We are also not dumbing down our curriculum, as many parents have said to me. We are maintaining the rigor and challenge of our current courses for all of our students. Equity is offering the same challenge to all students while providing appropriate support for any student when he or she needs it. With this in mind, here's what we know. Our students do not fit into boxes. It is not equitable to continue to put artificial ceilings on students because we don't think that they can rise above them. We've seen that our students can rise to the occasion, and we've begun to increase the rigor of our regular courses to minimize the gap between our honors and regular courses as they exist. We know that a learning opportunity that's good for one student is also likely to be good for many of our students, or all of them. And our training that we participated in allows us to plan our lessons with many access points for a variety of learners in a heterogeneous mix. Finally, by not giving all of our students access to the same learning opportunities, we are doing them a disservice because we are perpetuating and widening the gaps that already exist, both academically and socially. Our staff is hopeful that we can move forward with this endeavor, and we look forward to your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
And that is just, are you going to stay around for when we get to that on the agenda, or no?
That's my hope.
Okay.
Unless it's past
just in
10:30.
case there are other questions. Hopefully it won't be. Thank you.
Just a little kid at home.
Jared, is it plugged? Is the microphone plugged?
Yeah, the microphone's plugged in.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was looking at the- Okay. Okay, next is Todd Anderson Goldsworthy.
Hello, I'm Todd Anderson Goldsworthy. I live at 422 Glenway Street in Madison. I teach math at the high school in addition to coaching volleyball, advising the Ski and Snowboard Club, and I am treasurer for the MGEA.
And I'm Janice Stone, and I teach band and jazz band at Glacial Drumlin School. I am also co-president of the MGEA. First, on behalf of the MGA, we would like to thank the board for your ongoing support of teachers in our district and your commitment to collaborating with us regarding the salary structure. For several years, we've worked together with the Personnel Committee to develop a salary structure that allows for predictability and transparency while monetarily recognizing the differences in licensure and highest education level.
So with agreement on the structure, the challenge we're now faced with is twofold. How do we place current staff members onto the structure, and how will new hires in the future be placed onto the structure? The MGEA believes that the only fair and equitable way to place teachers onto the structure is by recognizing their total years of service, without reducing anyone's current salary.
During committee meetings, there has been some pushback against this method of placing people with no offer of an alternative solution. On the district website, there are several goals we would like to highlight that seem to suggest that an objective placement by total years of service fits the district's mission.
First, a cornerstone of the ICS, or Service Delivery Framework, that guides everything teachers are doing in the classroom says that, quote, systems are in place to support recruitment and retention. It goes on by outlining a step that says the district is committed to, quote, leverage funding to eliminate inequities. Currently, there are dozens of significant salary inequities in our district, and a meaningful way to address and fix these moving forward is by adopting an objective placement plan onto the schedule by using total years of service.
Furthermore, if we do not use total years of experience to place teachers onto the structure, this will go against the district's strategic plan. Part of this plan states that, quote, the district will develop and implement systematic methods to recruit and retain diverse and highly effective personnel. If we were to use something besides total years of experience, what would we use? What criteria would be used that is still systematic and objective and fair and equitable?
Finally, there are arguments out there like the inequities aren't that bad, there aren't that many examples, this is an old problem that we inherited. My answer to that is the inequities are bad, there are many examples, and this is not only a problem of the past, but it's a problem now and for the future.
And then Todd is going to be passing out a packet for you that highlights 14 specific examples of salary inequities that fit into several different categories of inequity. One thing to note, while some of these differences may seem small and insignificant now, when you consider that $4,000 of inequity over 10 years turns into $40,000 difference, that is significant. It also impacts how much money is put into that person's retirement, which then compounds over time.
We have several teachers who are here today to speak about how some of these salary inequities directly impact their lives, as well as how these inequities undermine the district's vision of equity and create a working environment for staff that can feel divisive and impacts morale. Please hear what they have to say and consider the MGEA proposal to place current and new staff onto the structure, honoring their total years of experience. Thank you for your time.
The next was Janice Stone.
We just went.
So,
Should have told me
I'm
you
sorry,
were
we went
tag
together. Sorry.
Is anybody
Same
else?
time.
Okay, anybody else a tag team I need to know?
That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you guys. Jason Roth.
Good evening. My name is Jason Roth. I live at 1017 Chieftain Lookout, Madison, Wisconsin. I'm the Social Studies Department Coordinator at the high school, and I've been in the district for the last 14 and a half years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the MGA proposal to honor years of service for all teachers in our district. At the start of the school year, I realized that I will reach a career milestone this January. At the end of the first semester, I will literally have been teaching for half my life. 22 and a half years of my 45 years on earth will be in classrooms working with students, which is a job that I love. Unfortunately for me, the Monona Grove School District does not recognize the 7 years I taught in another district at the beginning of my career, and as a result, my compensation does not match my years of experience. There are currently 57 teachers in the district, which is about 20% of the staff, who have worked with students for fewer than my 22 years, but who make more than me. There are 5 teachers who have been teaching in the district for exactly 22 years, but they make between $3,000 and $14,000 more than me. Several of those do have a master's, which I do not, but one of them, who has a BA, makes about $5,500 more than me per year. Does the mere fact that someone who has been in the district for their whole career mean that they should make 10% more than me every year for the same job? How is that fair or equitable? In my own department of 9, I have the second most years of experience, but I'm 5th in compensation out of those same 9. Hiring practices have changed here, obviously, over the last 14 years. When I was hired, I had to compete against 200 applicants. Now we're lucky to get 50 people to apply for a job in our department. As a result, salary packages have changed to help attract more quality applicants. And also as a result, our most recent hire, which was just 1 year ago, already has a starting salary $1,300 more than I make every year. And yes, we have the same education level, so how is that fair or equitable? If the district wants to attract and retain great teachers, I urge you to accept the MGA proposal, honoring years of service in our compensation packages. You are hiring teachers for their expertise, and experience is often a key ingredient in what makes a great teacher. Thank you.
Next is Brandon Beckwith.
Hello there.
Hello there.
My name is Brandon Ellsbury Beckwith. My address is 5210 Queensbridge Road in Madison. I am an at-risk coordinator and head football coach at Monona Grove High School. Usually I speak off the cuff, but this is the first time I've written something in a long time, so bear with me. Though I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak at a school board meeting, I do speak publicly often. The reality of this situation is totally outside my comfort zone, as I wish circumstances were different. I don't like talking about myself, especially proving my worth, but I'm willing to use my situation as a representation of each staff member or of other staff members where disparities in compensation have risen throughout our years. In 1980, my family moved to Cottage Grove, aka Someplace Special, if anybody knows the elementary school title back in the day, and my true love for the district began. A few years later, I showed up in a pre-screening for kindergarten where I nervously threw up all over the room. This began a 13-year educational journey where teachers, principals, and staff like Bill the bus driver were instrumental in shaping who I am today. I eventually graduated from MG in 1996. Graduating for most is time to move on. I never left. I continued to work in the community while I attended college and began my love for coaching. In 2004, I was hired as an at-risk teacher and a coach at Monona Grove High School. 15 years later, my blood is still silver and blue. Today, I still dedicate my life to Monona Grove, the staff, the students, and the community. In 2015, something tried to change how I saw myself. Outwardly proving my value within this district came to the forefront of my mind. And I kept questioning and stressing about how I would find time to develop written rationale to prove myself as a level 4 master teacher. That wasn't who I wanted to be. I noticed myself resenting more and more teachers who, because they were deemed worthy of a master teacher title, were separating themselves from me on the salary schedule. Resenting others for their success definitely wasn't who I wanted to be. On Friday, administrators, committee members will once again be evaluating professionals, well, at least their portfolios, and deciding whether or not staff are worthy of more compensation and whether they should be labeled as level 4 teachers. Though having neutral administration committees evaluate professionals outside of the building seems like an equitable, non-discriminatory practice, the reality is that judging, labeling, and compensating based off one's skills and portfolio making is a bit absurd to me. Personally, I'm not allowed to even apply for level 4 placement, as I do not have a master's degree and currently have no plan to add another commitment to my already busy schedule. I understand that I had the opportunity to apply years ago, but due to starting a second full-time job at Monona Grove as head football coach in 2015, I missed my opportunity and no longer have an opportunity for leveling up without quitting coaching and heading back to school. After 40 years of my life dedicated to Monona Grove community, and specifically the past 15 years as a teacher, equity and excellence team member, and a coach at Monona Grove High School, today I am the lowest paid teacher in the district with 15 years of experience. There are currently 46 teachers with the same or less years of overall total years of experience who make more money than I, with a disparity of $17,100 within those teachers, me being the lowest. With the open negotiations of starting salaries and advancement through the current level system, those numbers will only rise. Teachers are rightfully so being hired at much higher amounts as I sit and wait to be passed up. Recently, MGA proposed a salary scale that addresses the importance of fair wages for all while promoting long-term dedication to this district. Please consider using MGA's proposed salary structure. And since I'm out of time, I'll still thank you for your time and all your efforts.
Next, I hope I pronounced this last right. Jennifer Klotzbach.
Oh, it is close enough for government work. Hi. My name is Jennifer Klutzba. I live at 999 Chandler Lane in Sunbury. I've taught reading in the Monona Grove School District my entire career. I actually graduated from MG too. When I was hired, the superintendent at the time made a point of telling me that the pay was lower than comparable districts to begin with, but post-retirement benefits and compensation in later years would make up for that if I stuck with the district. I've stuck with the district for 25 years. And in 2002, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in post-retirement compensation, and due to having required deductions, my take-home salary actually decreased by $2,000. Teachers who have less than half my total years of service are earning close to $7,000 a year more than what I currently make. 2 decades after a handshake and don't worry, we'll pay you later, the district saying we can't afford it. But they can afford to pay someone with 3 years in the district $8,000 more a year than I make after 25 years here. As a reading teacher, I do more than just teach reading. I shoot baskets with kids, I walk the halls, I run the stairs, I sit in the corner talking with or just listening to children who are struggling academically and emotionally. I've been choked by a student in crisis. I've been hit and kicked more times than I can count. One year I worked with a student who went to live with his grandparents mid-year due to abuse at home, and when he came back to our school a few months later, he came down to my room at recess, closed the door, said he had a plan if his dad showed up. He'd run from his classroom down to my room, and he'd call 911 from there because he knew I'd keep him safe. As a reading teacher, I've worked with and designed instruction for 4th graders who came to our district reading at kindergarten level, and with 2nd graders reading at a 5th grade level. I earned my master's in reading in 2001, and in 2012, I was the district reading specialist for Monona Grove School District for DPI Title I purposes. I do a lot of different jobs, and others that do the same jobs are paid several $1,000s a year more than what I'm paid. And these people are new to the district. But the thing is, those teachers should be paid a competitive wage, and so should veteran teachers. It's time for MGSD to once again place teachers by years of service to pay all teachers a competitive wage, and to show that the district truly appreciates and recognizes the service and dedication of all its teachers. Thank you.
Next is Kevin Connor.
Hello, my name is Kevin Connor. I live at 718 Wellbridge Road in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin. Thank you for meeting with us tonight and hearing what we have to say. I'm an 8th grade science teacher at GDS. I'm also the head baseball coach at the high school. I am an 8th grade basketball coach at GDS and recently became the co-leader of the 8th grade GDS Washington, D.C. trip. This is my 20th year of teaching, my 6th year here at Monona Grove. Tonight I'm here to talk about the compensation model that exists here at Monona Grove School District. I didn't get into this profession to become wealthy. I knew that wasn't going to happen long term, but being the son of 2 teachers in the Medford School District, I saw firsthand how teachers impact the community and impact children, and it led me right to this profession. I understand that 2010 changed the landscape of how districts pay their teachers, and districts today are still trying to figure that balance out to find an adequate and fair system. As a parent, community member, teacher, and coach in this school district, I can say that I wouldn't want my children, my family, or myself to be anywhere else. But I can tell you that I feel disheartened and completely undervalued with the knowledge that other staff members with the same amount, or in some cases less experience than myself, are compensated more for their work. As a level 4 educator deemed by the district, I am thought of as a leader within my department and school. But with the compensation model being the way that it is now, and having a system where everyone is somewhat out for themselves and on various contracts that they've had to negotiate independently, we aren't building that sense of community for educators that retains them and holds each other to the high standards that makes Monona Grove a sought-after place. I urge you to meet with the compensation committee and start to look at how we set up a compensation model that levels the playing field for all, paying all a just and fair salary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone, for speaking, and I know that the board is going to look in and do the best they can. That's all I can say at this moment, because we have been attacked since Act 10, and government has not given up no money, and we're struggling. We're ranked 27th in the world in education. We slipped another down. We have 26 other countries that's better than us as a nation. And with the dedication that everyone does and the low wages and everything around Wisconsin, not just us, it's around Wisconsin, we have to find some ways. So hopefully in this near future, we can work on some things so we can get you paid adequately to educate. And my son is out here sitting next to his mentee, because he teaches Mr. Foster how to dress correctly at work. And he looks up to him, and he also looks up to me. And I can see it in the kids' eyes when I visit the schools. I haven't visited out here in Winnequa as much as I needed to, but I do see that the kids do enjoy being here, and we will try our best. We're going to do our best to do something here. That's guarantee that. So thank you for coming out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our consent agenda.
Thank you.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
First, second, any discussion? None? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Recognition information.
Okay, we have 4 recognitions this evening. First of all, 7th grader Mackenzie Babcock has been running races with her mom since she was 5 years old. Now 12, Mackenzie will compete this week in the Junior Cross Country National Championships held here in Madison and hosted by USA Track and Field. Mackenzie and her mom, Brianne, who also serves as assistant coach of the Monona Grove girls basketball team, were recently featured on NBC 15. So best of luck to Mackenzie. Monona Grove Silver Connection performed at the recent tree lighting at the Governor's Mansion. 2 years ago, Silver Connection performed for Governor Evers when he was then the state superintendent of public instruction. Governor Evers remembered the Silver Connection, and Director Lori Naherniak invited the students to perform for the tree lighting ceremony at the executive residence. Students caroled as the public entered the gates and sang a number of songs throughout the ceremony. 7th grader Julia Robbins was awarded the Nichols Green Distinguished Student Award at the Wisconsin Gifted and Talented Conference this fall. This honor highlights her leadership with the GDS Gay Straight Alliance. She received a certificate and $250 scholarship towards summer enrichment opportunities. Congratulations to Julia. Finally, Monona Grove School Board President Andrew McKinney has been named one of the most influential black leaders in Wisconsin by Madison 365. Andrew, we're proud of your work and are thrilled to see your leadership recognized. Congratulations.
I was just as surprised as you Monday when I
Teachers Union,
That's nice.
write the letter when the time is right.
How much did that increase your pay?
I don't know.
What?
I don't see no pay.
No pay.
No, when you love what you do, you
I
don't
know.
you don't think about these things.
I know.
I love what I do.
If we could pay him more, we wouldn't have to give him awards.
So, do we have, I'd like to add a recognition.
Yes.
I'd like to recognize the High School Key Club who helped to host one of the community events in Monona last Saturday. And they were just wonderful. They were so respectful and inclusive with the children. And it was really wonderful to be able to watch the mix of students work with the community. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. Moving on to correspondence. No correspondence. Okay. Administrative reports. We'll move to MG21 annual report.
Hi. Well, we're back. It's that time of year again. Just want to say how glad we are to have so much support from this board and from Dan. It's been a tiring and exciting year for us, trying to do this brand new expansion thing. But we're managing, and we're back again with what I think is another really strong report about our last school year at the upper campus. So I'll let Rebecca tell you about that.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Fox Blair. I'm the executive director of MG21, and I'm presenting our annual accountability report for last year from 2018-19. So this data is based on our original contract, our charter that we've now redone. So it's based on the old charter, and it's based on data just from last year, which was serving the upper campus. There was no middle campus last year. Our performance measures, I kind of start out with just some general demographic data. I put in then our school performance measures as from the charter, and then included our regular budget, included a snapshot of our 5-year grant budget, included the parent and student satisfaction surveys, included the data from our HOPE survey, included kind of our curriculum, a summary of our curriculum. And I guess the other thing I would highlight is typically at the end of the report, we usually have kind of 2 sections, kind of like big successes, like things that happened this year. And so obviously the piece that I highlighted was our expansion and the changes that we've made at our school. So we did, in the beginning of this school year, expand to have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at a middle campus of our school. And that was based on great support from the district to kind of remodel the rest of Nichols School, and based on the grant that we received from the federal government to kind of set up and start this new expansion. We were able to hire 2 new staff members who have been running the middle campus. And then we additionally had to replace a teacher who had left last year, Alyssa Hartson, and we were able to hire an excellent new teacher, Dr. Michelle Bartman, and we also have hired a part-time person to supplement part of my job so that I can have some release time to manage the school and the grant and all of those things. And so that's the big news on like kind of what happened over last year. We spent the bulk of last year planning and setting up this new middle campus. And then the last piece of information that's in the report is kind of our continuous improvement. So at the end, well, throughout the whole year, but at the end of every year, we identify areas, systems that we need to improve, and then we put pieces in place to try to improve those systems. And so you'll see kind of a summary of what that looks like. Are there questions that I can answer?
Susan?
I just want to thank you for this incredibly excellent report. It's so nice to be able to look and say, okay, how many students are there this year? How many students are the new enrollees? What's the absenteeism? What's the attendance? How are these students doing? And if you go to graduation, you have a pretty good feel for that anyway, because that's a wonderful experience. But if anybody asks me, all I have to do is tell them to open this PowerPoint and read the data, to be able to see the numbers. Where were we? What are our goals? And where did we end up at the end of the year? It's so incredibly fulfilling to this district. I appreciate that.
I'd like to thank you for the dimension of your program that stresses public service, community service portion of it. My wife, particularly involved with the library book sale, appreciates all your students coming in there and shoveling and lifting and carrying books all around to get it all done. And she supports your program immensely, just for those kind of public. But I know you do much more.
They also come and help you when you're flooding, on call. And came down and actually saved effectively 2 streets and probably a home.
I'd be all with you too if you did leaves and lawn too.
I'll get right on that.
I was impressed with the survey results of the students. It appears that the students are really enjoying being in school. So.
Thank you. It's been, you know, a big change for us to be starting this new middle campus. Just trying to figure out what works at the upper campus and how does that play out at the middle campus, and kind of trying to create this kind of one school, bringing all of the staff together and all of the things that have been involved in all of this. And a big learning curve for us. You know, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. So, you know, I'd just like to say thank you to all of you. Thank you so much to Jared Rosing and to Dan Olson for your support. It's just been a huge amount of work to try to kind of get this off the ground, and just really appreciate everybody's support and your faith in us to deliver a quality product for students in this district.
Peter?
Thank you. You know, you can come here a year and always give good reports, good questions. I think I don't have any more questions for you about the high school, but I would like you to know, since you're here in front of us and the board's front of us, and I've come down and talked to you about how's it going with the expansion with the middle school students this year.
I think better and better. Like I said, we didn't know what we didn't know until we were in the middle of it. But I feel like we've learned a lot. I feel like we have made changes to the program and the curriculum as we're going. We have support of a number of different kind of partner schools, mentor schools that our staff have been visiting and working with. And I feel like we're making improvements all the time. It's still a lot of a challenge, you know, just because middle schoolers are really different than high schoolers.
And if I can add, Dan has been enormously supportive of us. And one of the things we kind of realized was Chris Langer being out at GDS and trying to deal with back and forth to us was really a struggle. And so John Rouse, last name, is now our administrator for the middle campus. And having him more available to us and right here, I think has been another one of those things that's really helped us get on better footing.
But I do want to say, you know, thank you so much to Chris Langer for all her years of working with us and supporting us and helping us get this expansion grant happening and moving and all of that. It was huge. So good partnership for sure.
Do you foresee that there's anything that's going to have to change next year when you come around with the middle school, you know, compared to what you initially planned? Are you going to be able to?
I think that we may not grow as quickly as I had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
To be truthful, I think that it may be a slower growth. And so we may just stick and hold with the amount of students and staffing we have for this year and kind of go into year 2 that way. I don't know. I guess we'll see what the kind of the demand in the district is and what the interest on the part of parents and students are, but I'm not sure that we will grow as quickly as I had initially kind of imagined.
Could you just say a word about to what extent these 2 age groups will be fully integrated or
How they're working together?
Or separated or something in between?
So right now they're way more separated than we would like. We're working right now on bringing them together. We have a group of high school students that are trained as mentors that are working, starting next week, be working directly with the middle schoolers. And then we are working, we're working on all school kind of service projects, and it's our 10-year anniversary this year as a school. And so we're working on a school-wide 10-year anniversary project and a number of different things to kind of bring all the students together. And so I think as we continue to move forward, it'll be just part of what we do. But right now we're still building that piece.
Are you going to have a middle school graduation ceremony separate from the high school?
Yes, I think we will have. They're still in the process of kind of shaping what that's going to look like, but there will be some kind of celebration, promotion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and everything. Appreciate it.
All right, Director of Business Service.
Just like to update the board. So the district has been with Nelson's Bus Service for the last 6 years. We actually went out to RFP, and Nelson's was awarded that contract effective for the 2014-15 school year. That cycle is now coming back around, and so we will be issuing a transportation services RFP, and I put the dates under the administrative context. So the issue will happen on January 13th, and they will be due back to the district by the 31st of January, with the goal to bring it to the board at the March 11th board meeting for a recommendation. And that recommendation perhaps might stay with the current vendor or changing vendors. We will put together a committee to review those RFPs, which will include district staff, including myself, Director of Student Services, the athletics director, and working with principals and the superintendent to evaluate those.
What's the current cost, the annual cost of the Nelson's contract?
So we're at about 1.7 million.
Thank you.
The are you going to have different specifications or anything that were criteria for the contract that change, like the fuel system? I think the fuel system during certain times we're not able to get the buses moving, and that some bus companies operate differently. I forgot the details of that, but I think
So,
you can answer what I don't know.
There are opportunities to look at different types of fuel systems, such as propane, which obviously is not affected by cold, or just straight up diesel like we currently have. And those will be questions that will be presented to us, or answers will be presented to us to determine that.
Okay, there'll be factors you'll consider that this time, because I think we lost some bus transportation days, didn't we?
Well, yes, we did lose one, and we do have to understand that that was from the fuel company delivering the wrong diesel fuel to the bus contractor.
Okay.
And we do have, that was completed in writing from a local vendor of ours. So. But anyways, there'll be a rubric of 8 different things that we do look at. It won't look at just price. It will look at, availability, price, the sustainability side of things. It will look at the different types of routing systems that they use to be efficient. We'll look at, I don't have it in front of me, but there are 3 other criteria that we do put in the RFP that we will evaluate against.
Right. Thanks, Jared. Superintendent report.
I've got nothing additional. We've got a long agenda, so we'll just.
Okay. Move to board reports. Susan Fox.
All
All right, well, this will be short because the Personnel Committee met on November 14 to discuss bargaining with the MGEA on base wage for the current school year, and our next meeting is scheduled for January 7 from 4 to 6. And that's really all I have to say about that.
We had a lot of teachers come in here and talk about plan, which is apparently being discussed in the Personnel Committee, and we've seen a lot of emails, and I'm a little surprised because we haven't had anything reported out from the Personnel Committee about sort of what the status and what's going on. And I'm wondering if you could fill us in so we as a board know what's going on with that, when are informed when the teachers come talk to us about it.
Actually, there have been a couple of reports out in previous meetings, and we did come up with a new compensation plan, which they are pretty agreeable with, basically, and we did report that out. It has not come to the board formally because we haven't agreed to the whole thing. It's tied in with what we're hoping to do is implement that plan with the new salaries this year, and we're still bargaining the salaries, so that's all in closed session, so there's not a lot to report about that to the board. The main, we do have a new proposed salary schedule that recognizes that does have different steps, and if people are hired, they're correct that in the new market, when people are hired, they generally are being given their credit for their years of experience, and we have worked over the last several years to try to create, when we raised the base wage 6 or 7 years ago, we had this problem where all of a sudden we had current teachers at Monona Grove who'd been here a while who were making very little more than the brand new hires pretty quickly. So we've been every year trying to add a little bit and trying to deal with that issue, but it's extremely expensive to try to raise everybody up to that level all at once, and we don't have the funds to do that. So we've been, in this year, our current proposal will also move in that direction towards fixing some of these, what they're referring to as inequities. But that's where the difference is. The current plan that we have proposed is dealing with steps, and what the teachers want is to have everyone recognized for actual years of experience. The price tag difference is enormous. So we're still talking about that, and we're moving in that direction, but we're not, we don't have an agreement yet, so that's kind of where we are.
The last time we did a compensation plan, the committee met we had a special committee met for a couple of years, and regularly provided the board both with updated information, but also got feedback with the board if the plan was in line with what the board as a whole, what their expectations were.
Well, again,
right, hang on, I'm not done yet. I think what's important, if there's sort of redoing the compensation plan in the works, I think that should, in its preliminary stages, come to the board, so the board as a whole can look at it and see if that's the right direction for the committee to go with, because after all, the committee is just advisory to the board.
Correct.
And should be working with the support of the board, and the board so in my mind, particularly considering the correspondence we get, the board should see this plan and not only have an opportunity to provide feedback to the committee if we believe that this is the right direction to go.
We can talk about that, and perhaps, I was looking to see, because, well, first of all, you have access to the Personnel Committee meetings, and the plan is posted in those meeting agendas, and I will be happy to look for where that is and send it to you all so you can look at it again. It was reported before, and we did talk about the differences. We have not gone into detail because of the fact that we're trying to implement the plan. The numbers on the plan are part of what we're negotiating and trying to figure out where we go with that. So it's just more complicated, but I understand that.
I'm not asking for the details.
Right.
What I'm saying
you could get the outline of the plan.
The process should be that if you have an outline, if you want to change the compensation plan, it should come to the board and get feedback, not just report, but get feedback on the board in details. As far as I know, it's never been included in board content, any details. In a board meeting, yes, in some of the personnel committee meeting contents. But if, moving forward, I think that the board needs to be more involved, as a whole, needs to A, be more involved in this process, and B, provide feedback so that the personnel committee has a direction to go with this.
Well, I think,
rather than, because you could go a long way with the teachers, and the board as a whole could say, well, this isn't the way we want to go, and then you have to take 3 steps backwards, and that could be a really big problem. And that's why you need to bring the board along as a whole if we're going to have a big change,
Right.
like
Well-
we did the last time.
Well, and I believe we did talk about the plans. I can go back and tell you what board meeting, because I have my reports, I don't have them here, because I didn't foresee this question. But yeah, we can put it on the board agenda in January and talk about the concept of the plan. It is actual dollars amounts in cells, and that's why it's not ready for a public document.
Well,
But
you don't have to
we can
put
tell you the
dollar
concept.
amounts in.
Well, we'll cross out all the, we can
Sure.
cross out all the figures and just show you what the outline is. I mean, we can do that, that's fine.
I think a point of
If it's-
clarification,
yeah, it's,
the collective bargaining is separate than the compensation model.
it is.
Right now, the personnel committee is engaged in bargaining. So we've only talked conceptually, there's not been a draft plan even written yet. So early on in meet and confer sessions, there was discussion about concept.
If I may, I'm hearing from teachers that there's a plan out there that for me to accept, and maybe that isn't true.
That's
But-
not accurate.
But we're getting all this information, and the board really needs to be informed,
August 14th.
particularly because of the
For
interest
the personnel.
involved in this.
Sure.
And, I've never, on an issue with the teachers as a board member,
August 14th, it's all right.
felt so completely sort of out of the process and uninformed around it. And I think the last time we did the compensation process, when it was a long process, the board was regularly updated, and we started with suggestions to the board, coming out. So maybe none of that's going on. But it's sort of not, which is fine to have a discussion and tell us, but that's not the feeling I get, right? Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah,
right.
and I just wanted to make the point that we're,
It's in the personnel.
well,
but
you
we
got it.
report
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, Susan.
Well, I guess I would like to bring the board's attention to the August 14th minutes from that personnel committee, which were reported out at the following board committee meeting. And it talks about very specifically, so as a board member, it's interesting that I have been informed as a board member through the personnel reports about this. And I was aware, in fact, Dean mentioned it as well, not just Susan, about movement through the plan, and there were some administrative thoughts about it. But number 4, and this was specifically reported out, we don't report that specificity in our minutes, but the question about using steps versus years of service, teachers expressed difficulty with the idea of newly hired teachers being placed on higher steps. This conversation is recorded in the minutes, and it was reported out at that following board member meeting. I don't know that there was a written report, but I actually have some notes from that meeting. So I agree. Once it was, I look at the sustainability committee, and I had some similar feelings where you're saying you can form subcommittees, but you can go have coffee. Again, we all do things a little bit differently and have the discussions a little bit differently as chairs. But as long as it comes back and the report out gets to us, and I think it's perfectly a good idea to say, you know what, I feel a lot of touch with this, I'd like to know more. And similar, I've requested about bridges, I requested about advanced learning. We talk about the policies, and the board brings that to us. I also want to know what sustainability is doing, and what their thoughts are about breaking into subcommittees. A lot of reports I would like to hear are going to the equity committee. The advantage is if you can go to the committee, you can get the reports. We got data in that committee that was excellent that we haven't received as a board either. So it's a valid issue, and I think a board member should bring that forward as they see it. But it's very clear to me as a board member, they've been talking about this, and they've been talking about incorporating years of service. And I think if Nicole were here tonight, who goes to those meetings and listens to our board meetings, she could also substantiate that we've heard some of that.
Well, and I thank you for finding that, because it is, if you go to the September 24th Personnel Committee meeting and look at the draft minutes from the August 14th meeting, you will see all of that outlined in those minutes. And that was in my board reports, which are not written, but I can find that and send it to you. And that, so you'll have an idea of what that is. So we did talk about the concept, and I know I talked about it in my board report. It is a vague concept right now. As Dan said, it's not written into a formal final plan. because we're still talking about numbers. But we can have more of a report and talk about it in January. I think that's fair. I mean, that makes sense.
I was just going to say, just send everything, send each of us an email.
I'll do that. Tell you where to find it.
where
I'll
to find
actually
it,
just
and then
recopy
we
it
can
and send
review
it. That's
and
fine.
we'll just review it from there, and then we'll move forward to January 7th.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I think it's important, not to rather have just brief reports. There's nothing written, but for the personnel committee, if we're going to do compensation plan, to get feedback from the board as to the direction to go. Because that's the way we've worked in the past on things like that, and I think it's important that we work that way going forward.
We'll let them send it so we can review everything that they've done in the past few months here.
So how I'm confused now. You've all managed to confuse me.
Okay, understand.
That's what we're here for.
Yep. So as a chairman of a committee, Peter, are you asking that we email or contact every board member and let them know exactly what we're discussing?
No.
Then what are you asking so I know what to do?
I am asking. I am getting a lot of feedback about a compensation plan from teachers, and we have not, as a board, discussed that.
But it has
been
discussed. It has been discussed.
Remember,
it has been discussed.
I'm sorry, you asked for my response.
I know, but you're saying it hasn't been discussed, and it has on board reports. It is available for us to review. So what in addition to those two things?
Well, Susan just said it's not available because there's no written plan.
Okay.
So how can it be available if it's not written down?
Conceptually, it is available.
It's actually, I mean, the information that we have is very sketchy, and not only that, but it is important. When it's something important and big, it is important that we have a discussion where the board can, like this, because it's how we, paying teachers is what we do as a district. The whole board needs to be involved in the discussion, and that is the precedent that this board has set. Okay? Committees are advisory, and when there's something big going on, it's important that the committee have direction from the board. So all I'm asking, and everybody has agreed to it, so I don't know what the argument is that we have a discussion about this in January.
I'm not arguing. I'm trying to get clarification because I'm a chairman of the board. I want to know if there's something that I need to do in that role, what it is.
Yeah, for example, and I think you've done a good job for these high school course proposals, that are coming before us tonight. That's been fairly straightforward, for example, for me to follow what's going on.
We've heard nothing about that until tonight.
I have seen, yes, we get the final thing tonight, but you've mentioned it, and we've seen it coming forward if anybody wanted to talk about it. But I don't know what we're arguing about. We've agreed that we should discuss it. We should discuss it in January. So what is the argument?
Being respectful to start.
Be who?
Respectful.
I just asked that we could discuss it. So, and everybody seems to be in agreement. So let's discuss it.
Let's move on. See what I mean, son? Okay. All right, Peter, we're going to move to the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee.
All right, the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee has met twice since the last board meeting, and the first of those meetings we sort of had a review of current efforts in the district, regarding energy efficiency projects that we've seen from McKinstry. And the interesting, the bottom line of that thing is that we're saving about $200,000 a year in utility costs, given that process. It was also interesting because our McKinstry, the folks who worked with McKinstry put together sort of a draft proposal for a solar installation, essentially, on all of our schools, about, I forget, 2 megawatt capacity. Total cost would be $3.4 million. To the district, it would be 2.8 after the incentives, and that would provide about 47% of our district usage, and it would save an additional $200,000 a year in utility costs. Now, of course, it's entirely preliminary. There's a lot of work would have to go behind that, but that is the kind of thing that we could look at, and that's between the past $200,000 and if we could achieve this $200,000, that's $400,000 that we have to put on the salary schedule which is, you know, when I started this process years ago, you know, that was my goal, free up money that we in our operating budget that we can put in more productive places where we can put into education. And so those things are sort of, those are promising things. At our second meeting last week, we did two things. Well, actually, we did one thing, which is talk about sort of our first priorities. And I emailed around a list of those earlier today. And what we're going to start doing is sort of the first things we want to start working on. There's 5 of them. One is to evaluate the district facilities and our electric consumption and so on in consideration of a draft of drafting a plan for a solar installation along the lines of what McKinstry is suggesting. Second would be to draft a district sustainability policy and some goals. Third would be to take a look. We have some very capable folks on the committee. There's a lot of talent, a lot of knowledge and information. And we've got a group that would like to take a look at our facilities, new and existing, at sort of the current status of the energy efficiency and see if there's any other opportunities that we can look for. The fourth area is to identify and plan for student, staff, and engagement, including student access to data and instructional tools, to look at a draft, to look at, draft sort of some proposals, plans, how we can accomplish that. And then the fifth thing is what we're calling the Sustainability Summit, which is to work with the county and other school districts in Dane County to create a forum for exchange of information and ideas that can all help us get down the path. One of the things that I learned recently, for example, is that Sun Prairie has an energy manager, and they document that they're saving $100,000, a little bigger than we are, but they document they're saving $800,000 a year on utility costs, and that's money that they can put into their operating budget. And that's a guy up there, and what I really want to know is how the heck are you doing that? Because he's been working on this for 10 years, and he has a lot of interesting things that going on. Now, we've done some of that, but for us to be able to sort of use that knowledge of the things that are going on there in Middleton, Oregon, to have access to that exchange, it can make this process a whole lot easier. That's my report. Any questions? Susan?
Well, basically I had 2. The language that the committee provided in number 3 was actually oversight of facility new and existing energy efficiency, with the idea, at least as Lynn stated in my notes, was to provide oversight versus evaluation. I think what you just reported out was evaluation of facility new and existing, and I think that might be a better word in terms of the advisory committee position. The other thing was, in this committee, as it's being oriented, the chair did a really nice job, particularly at the first meeting, about showing the committee about board docs and how to use the district resources. I think it's really important for the committees to understand a little bit about the open records law as well, so that when they meet as a subcommittee of the committee, that's a public meeting, and that's required to be publicly noticed and available for public to attend those meetings. And if it's, if you have a quorum in the room, then you also have to be cautious about those pieces. I just think it would be nice, because the committee is really excited about what they're doing, and it's great harnessing of energy. So I just think that might be a helpful part as they go forward.
Yes, if at this point I don't anticipate any subcommittee meetings. Smaller groups of people, in each case less than, certainly less than a quorum, have been sort of, individuals in smaller groups have been sort of tasked with coming up with initial drafts, sitting down and discussing that. It would be the same as, if I, sat down and drafted a policy to present to this board or something like that. We can do that, but yeah, we will be careful about not having meetings which have a quorum present or are, will be board tasked with formal action. We'll make sure that we do everything at the committee level. We will do make all the decisions at the committee level and not have groups that would meet in violation of the open meetings. Susan?
Well, with all due respect, my understanding of that is when you have subgroups meeting and they're part of a bigger committee, they can meet during that posted committee meeting time. But I think it's questionable if they're having separate ones. That's just one thought. The other thing is, I'm just wondering when you talk about, I know McKinstry has already done for the district a review of a lot of our current facilities. And some of this, it's just hard for me to picture how you would get this information without some cost being involved with having people go through it. And that committee certainly doesn't have the authority to do that. And I'm just wondering how that works.
That hasn't been
Nothing like
discussed
that
or addressed. If
okay.
something comes up with cost, then that would be a different issue that we would have to make.
And I think, things like planning, student and staff engagement is fine. Again, as you just pointed out, committees are advisory.
That's right.
So they could come up with plans, but I think we have to be real careful about that there's no directing staff to do anything, and that would include directing Jared to do anything, and directing certainly anything affecting curriculum, all that kind of thing. I think it's fine to get all these ideas, as long as they're kept as ideas.
That's exactly, we're an advisory group.
Perfect. That sounds good.
And in fact, what we want to do in terms of student and staff engagement is work with the staff to see what we could do, what proposals we could put together that would help them move this along. There's kind of an interesting thing. So yesterday morning, the environmental science class had meetings where students put together proposals for things that could be done in the schools to reduce our energy usage. I just got a list of those, but there were essentially four student presentations. Things like changing shower heads to school planting trees, I think, were some of the things on the list. And it would be interesting those are some of the things that proposals that might come forward. And what the committee could do with that is take a look and see, how those could be supported. For example, is there opportunity working with the foundation or other sources or other funding to support some of these student activities? But really to look at that and say, gee, what can we do to help?
Right. Yeah, and I was aware there was a class there too, and I know they've been doing some things, so that's good. Okay.
Well, and I just add, I know one of the things that did come up in that committee meeting was cost, and there was some discussion about it. And actually, twice during that discussion, the word additional referendum was used. So again, in light of the fact that property taxes just came out, again, we want to support that, but I think that kind of language we really want to come kind of to the board. There was also some discussion that might be helpful for the board to be aware of about staffing, additional staffing, which would be, there was a title to that, and I can look in my notes. I think it was, is it Ken's title?
We talked about a lot of things.
Yeah, but you specifically talked about that.
And
then the example that, the example that was used was, that you explained to the committee, was that had been done in the Community Engagement Committee successfully done in the Community Engagement Committee in relation to communication. And that person was hired by the board. So again, those are the kind of things that I think would be helpful for us to hear, because we're going to hear those in the community. And I appreciate, wait, I'm not quite done, and then you can hit both points. And I appreciate input from the board about staffing of those, because there were at least 2 committees that there was a recommendation that one staff member be on 2 committees. And that's a staff member that's overseeing our facility project right now, and I was a little concerned about that. So again, those are just my thoughts about it's a really neat committee, and they're having great discussions. I'm a little concerned about a couple things.
We talked about an awful lot of things, and if we decide that we want to have start talking about a staff member or something. I mean, I gave you a list of the 5 things that we're going to start working on. If none of those involve hiring anybody or a new position, and these are the things that we're going to move forward on. There were a million things that were sort of brought up one way or another, and we're not going anywhere with those right now. So I'm not reporting on every last.
The discussion related to the oversight committee.
Oversight committee.
That's what you called it. I've got the notes right there.
Well.
That's what
yeah,
you called
it. And I changed oversight for evaluation based on the discussion that we had there, because I think it is a more accurate representation of.
Okay, but that's where that
of what
discussion occurred.
Okay, we'll move on to the policy committee. Susan Manning.
Yeah. Anybody that wants to come to that committee is welcome. We met on December 4th for at least 2.5 hours and reviewed. Neola had come to us with their suggestions for revisions, and there were 32 policies that we reviewed, and we'll be bringing them to the board in January. And they're posted, if you would like to look at them ahead of time. The administrative recommendations are, and generally, I would say 95% of the time, the administrative recommendations, we fixed 2 spellings, but were what we accepted, and that's posted in board docs under our December 4th policy meeting. So I welcome you to read those and review them. It's mostly non-substantial changes. It's mostly changes to form and fit with legal changes in the law. And then we updated the legal resources at the bottom.
Okay, moving on to the TLE committee.
TLE committee met last night. The majority of the time we were discussing the high school course proposals. Previous to that meeting, we had presentations from teachers, which was really helpful. Last night we reviewed some other data from districts that had similar implementation of ICS for equity and elimination of honors. It was all positive. We also reviewed some of the criteria to determine how we place students currently in our honors classes using ACT Aspire scores. And then it was quite a long discussion, and I'll talk a little bit more about the committee's feedback when we get to the action item on the high school course proposals. We also started discussions on the equity policy, reviewing or determining an equity policy, which we would want to coordinate maybe with the policy committee and Susan and you when we get to that point. So.
Okay, moving to possible action items. 2020-2021 middle high school course proposals.
Okay, so we have several proposals, lumped into this item. I think depending on what kind of questions board members might have, most of them, there's written proposals for each of them, so I think those explain pretty well. But if there are any specific questions, Dr. Bross from the high school and Lisa Height can answer those questions, or anyone else that's here that depending on how specific they are.
We should talk about the proposal for the high school English and science classes use the words of the proposed elimination of honors as separate courses. I know that a lot of people have concerns, and I think we should spend a little time on that. Do you want to talk about that, Eric?
Sure. I can tell you that I can tell you the feedback from the majority of the committee was that we support the proposal as it's written. Not all the members of the committee support the proposal, but the majority of the members of the committee do. There were some concerns. I'll tell you what the concerns were. One of them was people want to know more about the correlation between no honors and an increase, if that would increase the amount of AP classes that students would take. How we will see the effect or change without honors for students that are currently in honors right now. How do students in honors feel about the proposal? Will the change track subgroups to determine, or how will the change track subgroups and how do we determine growth with those groups? Some concerns were if we eliminate honors, will that track students? What would classes look like? Will there be goal setting and extra support for teachers to implement changes? Those are some of the concerns. We had quite a lengthy discussion on a number of those things. Not only last night, but the previous night. But after hearing the teachers speak about the importance of making this change, why they wanted to make the change, and the effect that it's going to have on all of our students, the majority of the committee, including myself, support this proposal.
Now, I have a little more question about it, which is that, I've done some research and I look at what's going on, and I believe that this proposal is that this is the right thing to do. However, I have a little trouble with the proposal as written because it doesn't, I think that this would be an excellent opportunity both to provide information that would reassure parents and the community, and for us to sort of fill out our strategic plan, which is, I think that there should be measures in this proposal. I think that we should document what we're going to use as measures of success, so that we can say down the road in a couple of years, well, we went after this and we did this. That's what I think, and it would give us an opportunity. I mean, we're supposed to be data-driven. We have a continuous improvement process. It's supposed to be data-driven. We've got all the right reasons, I think, to do this, but I think this is an excellent opportunity to say these are the measures that we would use as measures of success of this plan going forward.
I think we use the measures that we already have in place.
That would be fine, right? But what are those measures? And I would like to see that as part of the proposal that we expect. And of course, what we're doing this for is we believe that eliminating the formal tracking is going to improve the gap of the students. We're going to see better, we're going to see, well, I actually don't know exactly what we expect to see, how we expect to see that. But I would like to know what measures we can use for measures of success of this proposal, that we can come back in 3 years and say, look, this is being successful, or maybe it's not. And maybe Paul wants to answer that question. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think
good questions.
when we talked about it at the last committee meeting, and we also heard at our last board meeting when we got the report on all the different efforts that were going on in the district. One of the comments one of the big things with equity is removing barriers, and one of the barriers to more students taking advanced courses is when you do this tracking in those early 4 classes. And I think a lot of the idea behind this is that when you, we also heard a couple things. Actually, I should probably just let you answer this. But the teachers, all of the teachers at the high school, the English and science teachers, they teach both the honors and the regular. I mean, they all have had experience teaching them both. They went through skill bands and showed us that the same skill bands are taught in the science classes specifically, as what was told. So the idea is that not everyone is being equally challenged, and that by eliminating this tracking, you can equally challenge all students. The research that I found showed that there is strong research to show that it does harm to students who are not able to be in those classes where the challenges are, where the student body is the same, that there is some harm, that it does discourage their academic achievement. There is not evidence to show that that the same is true the other way. So I think there's a lot of thought that's been gone onto this, and I'll let Paul.
I'm sorry, but I didn't
Actually,
question
let Paul.
any of that, and I've read all the same research, and I agree 100%. But that has nothing to do with the measures of success. Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
The primary measures I would say is using are, for academics, the same ones we look at now mostly, and that would be grade data that staff keep track of, and they look at that unit by unit, and almost every unit, if not in units, at least quarterly, they break those down by cohorts in our different groups, from our students in poverty to students with IEPs to students of color. We continue to track and look, and we've looked at that over time, so we continue with that. And our main standardized work, again, we want to look more at growth and achievement. We would continue to do the same with our standardized. That's a little bit of autopsy data because it's after the fact. Looking at that during the year is done in our summative assessments, where we have embedded ACT and Aspire type questions and looking how students are doing on those, so we can use that as a predictor to how we think they'll do on the Aspire and the ACT when it's administered in the spring. But we would, when we get that data back, obviously we would look at growth of all of our students, but we'd break that down to cohorts also. So we've tracked that over a number of years, and we would continue to look at that standardized growth data and how different groups of students are doing.
Do you have that data going back for a couple of years?
We have that data for, yes, for as long as we've been given the ACT.
Okay, that's great.
By different cohorts. We haven't always just separate out the honors kids and the regular kids and looked at in those categories. What we've looked at is in our cohort data.
Well, I think that would be the measure that we would want to look at anyway, not the track data, but the cohort.
I would agree. That's what we'd want to focus on, and that's what's driving us right now to make this recommendation, is we have cohorts that aren't growing like we'd like to.
So this is a database decision.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so you see the cohorts that aren't growing, and so if this works, ideally we would see those cohorts with better growth.
That's true. Yep, that's our goal. Yep.
Okay. If I was to ask you to, put together that data, in a page, what that would look like, or a paragraph, or whatever, what we'd expect, what the expectations are, it sounds to me like you have a really good idea what
we have, yes, we have tables of the cohorts we've kept track of and the growth in each of those by grade level over
but even
several
to say,
years.
We would look at these cohorts A, B, and C by year for 3 years, and that would tell us whether or not this is being successful or not.
This is only one aspect of what drives that, but yes, it would certainly tell us that it's having a negative impact or moving us the right direction.
As part of being a data-driven school district, it's part of our strategic plan, saying we're going to use data and move, and continuous improvement. I would think that would be a great thing, and this is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, our intent, we wouldn't, we'd continue to track that and look at it just as we are now.
Okay.
We would,
Can we do that? Is that data available to the public? Is that publicly shareable data?
I don't know why it wouldn't be. It doesn't have individual students tracked to it. I'm hesitant with some of the cohorts because we have, some of our cohorts are small. I'd be hesitant I want somebody to look at that carefully, be thoughtful about that before we put it out. But certainly we share all that with our staff, and it's not with the intent of having any secrecy about it internally. But there'd be some sensitivity to some of the categories.
With the small cohorts.
Yep.
I think this would be a great opportunity, and also to be able to reassure the parents who have concerns about this, that we are doing the right thing. If we can look at this data, don't going down the road. And so, to be honest, what I'd like added to this proposal is a paragraph. This is the kind of data. This is the data that we would look at to judge the success of this program.
I agree. And actually, I got a few parent calls and 2 teacher calls with serious concerns about this proposal. These were teachers. One was a middle school teacher, and I feel they're very involved in this process and moving forward in this process. One of the things I talked to them about is, wouldn't it be worthwhile, because we're getting this recommendation from teachers and from the principal at the school, and I know that Paul looks at numbers because he's a continuous improvement person and evaluator. As Peter stated, if we could show the community that that's one of the factors we're basing this decision on, I think that would be helpful. The other thing that would be helpful, and I think Peter mentioned it, he mentioned getting those numbers and then making sure we looked at them in 3 years. I'm saying we should get them every year and look at them every 3 years. That's exactly how I felt at the workshop the other night. I thought, okay, where are my numbers, you know?
Well, I mentioned 3 years because it takes some time for changes to have an effect, and not like
Right.
that, it takes some time to build up some statistical meaningful
Validity,
numbers.
right.
That's why I didn't say every 3 years. I say, if you want me to evaluate this, I would arbitrarily right now pick a time and say 3 years from now I'd like to look at it.
A lot of the districts, though, are looking, even though
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
well, when we do our strategic plan, that strategic plan requires a report every year in the language of the plan. So I'm just saying that I support that thought in getting some basic data that says this is where we started, continuous improvement, this is where we want to go, and this is how we think we can get there. And I would also commend Paul for being there with us when we moved from the integrated science courses to the biology and chemistry. And it is very clear from the ACT scores that you have moved the students fairly dramatically on the ACT scores in science over that period of time where you integrated that coursework. So again, there are some numbers. If there's some things that are kind of simple to look at, that would be great. More complicated, we take that too.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not asking for numbers right now. I am just asking for a few sentences that say, we'll judge the success of this by looking at, by cohort, whatever, and going forward, and then we'll look at it for 3 years or something like that.
You said it should be measures in the proposal, so maybe you want to be more clear about that.
No, I want to know what the measures are. I don't want the measures themselves.
The other thing I would just advocate for is, I mean, we obviously, anything we're going to work with, we want to keep measuring. In context of all of our work, this is one piece in our equity work, right? Data is driving a lot of our equity work because of our outcomes, and our outcomes are not that different, unfortunately, from the Dane County area and from Wisconsin. So I just ask you to keep in mind that this honors proposal it's important, but in terms of our data tracking, the reason we're coming forward with it is one piece of our equity work that we think fits with the direction we want to go.
And I agree with that, and I know all that, and I know that it is one piece. I just think it's a big change. It's gotten some public interest.
Yep.
And not only that, but it's sort of a nice point. And I think that the data we have that you're working on would correlate nicely. So I think it's a great opportunity to do something like this. That's easier to do than with some of the other things that we're doing, and that's why I would like to see it included in this proposal.
Okay.
Well,
So one more, and then
I was
we're
just going to say that question came up in the first meeting that we already talked about. This was, how will you know whether this is working, was the question. And the response was that we'll look at these data, and we talked about there was some discussion about a 3-year period that we'd review it yearly, but you might start to see some shifts in that amount of time. And that's kind of when you look at the slides you looked at last night. That's kind of what. So I think that's fine. I don't personally need to see it written into the proposal itself, but I think knowing that we're going to do that. I mean, we did talk about that because I made that point that I asked about that at that meeting, but I feel confident because we're always looking at data and we're always looking at numbers. I know you are, that if we 3 years, 4 years, if we say, so how's this doing? We're going to take a look at it, is what I'm saying. It's part of our continuous. So I don't personally need to see it written into the proposal.
Well, I would like to make a proposal then.
Correct. That's all right.
Which my proposal would be, and we'll see if the support is that. I'm ready to support this. However, I would like to see it delayed until our next meeting, and a few sentences added about what.
Okay. We won't be able
Yeah,
to.
I should have said this at the introduction. Okay.
Yeah.
Annually, the board considers course proposals, revisions, deletions in December. And we are asking for action this evening because as soon as the board acts, Dr. Bross and his team will be immediately working on updating the course offerings booklets, which need to go out to students this month. And so this cannot be postponed until January, if it's going to be effective for next school year.
So I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the middle school, high school course proposals as written for GDS 8th grade health proposal lifeguard course proposal, and then the MGS proposal regarding the English science courses, which we've been discussing, and then expanding access and opportunity, the MGHS course offerings dated November 2019, as written.
Do I have a second?
I'd second.
All right. We should get any more further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next is 2020-2021 school calendar.
Could I just, and I'm going to make this as a personal board request because I'm allowed to under policy to do that. I'm going to ask that annually, not necessarily other numbers, but annually we get a report out on the teacher's impression about how this program is working, so that we get feedback as a board, and so we understand we're going to get that rather than ask for it and not get it on the agenda. So I'm just going to put that out there now.
I agree 100% with Susan, and I would like to ask that we get. And to be honest, I would like to see, you know, a paragraph now. What we're going to show you.
I would support that.
What we're going to show you next year or in 3 years or something like that. We want to be a data-driven. Our goal is to be a data-driven school district. So let's.
I will second anything that Peter and Susan agree to.
Is there just a sentence that we could have?
Point of order, we've already voted on this
Well, I
item.
know.
Discussion is
You're
over.
gonna
These
I'ma
are
have
future
these
future
two-
agenda items.
I'm gonna have
You can
these
talk
two
about
write
that.
it by
That's a
midnight.
future agenda item.
So we're gonna keep.
I'm sorry. The point of order is this is an agenda item on our agenda. We can.
Which
the
we have
fact that
voted on and
That
discussed.
doesn't matter.
It
We
does.
can continue to discuss it, and we can continue to make additional. We can continue to
I'll
make
ask for a
additional
rule
motions
from the
about it.
chair so we can
Yeah,
move on.
We just did this.
Yeah.
We could discuss this after we needed to get this done.
I know we got it, but the question is, can we do something? We can also do something else.
Let's put it on the agenda.
We'll put it on the
Right,
agenda.
put it on the agenda for
Oh,
January.
okay.
That'd be better.
Okay.
Next on the next agenda.
Reporting
That's
out
necessary,
in
but-
relation to the high school course changes.
Yeah, so now,
Great.
let's get back to business here. So now, we're here at the 2020-2021 school calendar.
Okay, so you have the proposed calendar before you. It is, I would describe it as very much a status quo. It's very similar to what we've had with regard to the number of in-service days, when they occur, when vacations occur, and so on. There is a summary sheet that highlights some of those areas about how many days we have of instruction, of in-service, and so on. The process is described briefly. We had a committee where we have representation of teachers from every school. We talked about some of the other additional major issues that could impact the calendar, like how and when we conduct parent-teacher conferences, how we do in-service days and so on. And so that is a larger separate conversation that we will, in fact, we have a committee meeting scheduled this week to begin those discussions, that if there's something major done like that, would look to impact the following year. We're going to have to, in 21-22 as well, make adjustments with regard to when the new school opens, with starting times and so on. And so I guess the point is we've had other discussions of major things that would also impact the calendar that will continue. But this calendar is pretty much a status quo for next year.
Susan?
I just want to validate there were teacher representatives and all that
There were.
involved in this process.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the 2021 school calendar as presented.
Second.
Eric, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Third item is 2020-2021 summer school dates.
Okay, and based upon the calendar just approved, we're recommending the summer school dates. I think the memo is pretty self-explanatory, and it's, again, consistent with what we've done in years past.
I move approval of the 2021 summer school dates as presented.
Second?
Been moved to second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ad hoc school naming committee.
Okay, we had this as a discussion item last month, had this as a kind of a draft proposal of how to go about the process process of naming our new school and considering out other possible names. Based upon the discussion, it seemed positive towards that proposal, so we brought this back asking for action tonight to create an ad hoc school naming committee.
Who do you foresee being on a committee like that?
Well,
Yeah.
sure, I can. So up to 15 members, we talked about including residents from both Monona and Cottage Grove, faculty and staff, students, and board member representation. Yeah.
I feel at this moment like I could challenge Jeff and say, can we sell the name for?
$37 million.
That's right.
Do I have a motion?
I move approval of the ad hoc school naming committee as presented.
Second.
Come on, get in there.
I was. I tried before.
Come on, you gotta get in there.
Maybe you'll get
Call
some
for a
chair.
second.
It's been moved to second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreements with MGEA Educational Assistance.
The collective bargaining agreement is attached. This is for the maximum allowed base wage of 2.44%, very similar to the other groups that the board has previously approved. And the distribution has been bargained, and the recommendation is attached. And so it has been ratified as well by the educational assistants.
Nice, okay. I move approval of the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement with the MGEA Educational Assistance as presented.
I'll second that.
So we're moving to second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 2019-2020 Educational Assistance Supplemental Pay.
Okay, so in addition to what you just approved that we were legally allowed to collectively bargain, we're asking for some additional supplemental pay for the educational assistants, basically to allow us to give the full increases as per the salary or the wage schedules that we have in place. So that's largely the additional compensation is to allow people to move to the complete step. The base wage didn't quite get them there. The steps are 3% increases. The base wage is only 2.44%. So it's to make up, that difference. And again, that is consistent with what the board has approved for other employee groups, a total of 2.5%.
I'd move approval of the, oh wait a minute, I gotta look at the right thing. Move approval of the 2019-2020 Educational Assistance Supplemental Pay as presented.
I second.
Moving to second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next is resolution on Native American mascots for schools.
Okay, and you'll recall I brought this up as a possibility at the last meeting because of the fact that Wausau has a resolution requesting the WSB and requesting other boards to join in their resolution, but requesting the WSB to urge legislation prohibiting the use of mascots by public schools. And you've got the report that I prepared last time and the Wausau resolution. So I tweaked the Wausau resolution a little bit. I decided to put two versions in here. So the first version, A, is very much like the Wausau version in that it requests that legislation. I included a paragraph. I changed some of the wording, so I thought it made more sense to me. But I added a paragraph about our mission, which is to enhance achievement by all students by cultivating the desire for learning and instilling social responsibility, in part by working together to inspire and engage students in meaningful learning opportunities by using research-based practices to address individual academic and social emotional needs. And then also this part I think relates very specifically by providing a safe and healthy environment that fosters respect and culturally responsive practices. So I felt like the resolution does fit with our mission. The question is, do we want to, if we want to pass any resolution on this, do we want to pass supporting legislation requiring school districts to retire Native American mascots? The option B is very similar wording, except that what it does is simply say that we join other Wisconsin school boards that have put forth similar resolutions and call upon our fellow Wisconsin school districts to choose mascots that do not demean Native American peoples. So in other words, it just makes a statement of support. And so there are two different versions. So I'm just presenting them for your discussion and possibly a motion. And part of this was also, sorry, to inform Andrew, who will be our delegate at the state convention, if this is a resolution that makes it to the floor. The process is, and I don't know where that is now, they had the Policy and Resolutions Committee, and at some point we'll see the resolutions that came out of that committee. If this one didn't come out of it, I think there's a process by which someone can bring it back at the state.
Yeah, for that, I just received information for Tuesday evening, what they're going to talk about, what's going to come up. And I think one of this was this here.
Okay.
So I'm going to make sure that happens, and then I will delegate on Wednesday to make sure that we make, when it comes down into that agenda item, that I would stand up.
Right, okay. That was part of why I wanted to bring it forward too. Okay, thanks. So any thoughts on which?
I would just like to make a supplementary comment on that, because in the state statute, section 118.13, which is the procedure by which the public could make a complaint about discrimination and so forth, in which we were the object of that a year or so ago, is that what triggered that was the discriminatory practices by Milton High School with their Indian guide type of thing, which triggered about 18 months of dealing with discriminatory practices. It ended up dealing with women issues, racial issues, but virtually all types of school complaint possibilities. And that was the statute under which we got the the book and that sort of thing. And I support that very, very strongly, because there are really there really have been, I think there are less today, there really have been some demeaning features of costumes and caricatures and so forth. But it goes much beyond that. It goes beyond the whole areas of marginalizing and discrimination for all groups. The Native American one seemed to be an easy one at the time for people, because they would have Milton had some silly person running out in the field as a wild Indian that most people laughed at and so forth. So,
I got a question.
Yes.
The mascot for the high school is the Silver Eagles. The mascot for Winnequa is the Owls. What is the mascot for GDS?
The Cardinal.
Red Hawks. Red Hawks?
What is it?
What is it for Cottage Grove Elementary?
It was a red bird. Yeah, it's a bird.
What about Taylor Prairie?
Eaglets.
The what? What?
Eaglets. Baby eagles. Eaglets.
Eaglets.
Baby
Eaglets.
Yes.
Yes. They're babies. Eaglets.
Got it.
John looks so funny. Smiles.
So this isn't an area of concern right now.
Correct.
Right.
But this is just assuring that.
Right. And we want to make sure that, as representatives of Monona, that we are in the fight to get rid of these Native American names on schools as well.
Any group that's
caricatured.
Is Susan, are you recommending that we make a motion to approve one of the drafts, whether it's A or B? Is there a preference?
My personal preference might be to just go ahead with A. The issue that was raised with me with WSB was that they don't like, that's not correct. They don't typically ask for legislation that they see it as some local control issues. Now, personally, I think civil rights issues aren't local control issues, and I see this as a civil rights issue. So I think it's different, but they just thought the wording, when I talked to the liaison there, was because we don't normally require boards to lobby for legislation that mandates something for districts to do. Stoughton opted to do the one where they just take a position. Madison, I don't know if I have my list here, but a number of other districts, Madison, Sun Prairie, among them have approved the Wausau version, which is the more strongly worded one, which does ask for legislation to just end it, say we just need to be done with this. There are still 31 school districts that use Indian mascots. So I was just looking for my list. I did a list of all the districts. There are a number of districts who have joined Wausau on that resolution.
Well,
That'd be version A.
I'm willing to make a motion to approve the draft resolution on Native
There's
American.
two.
There's
on Native American mascots, version A.
Okay. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I just want to say that I think it has a strong stance.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
it
A.
does. Oh, so the only other question is, I didn't, sometimes when we pass these resolutions, Joyce, I mean, they just get typed up and sent to the legislators. The question I had was, do we want everybody's signature on here? I'm doing the same thing I just did. I know. And I meant to discuss that before.
I'd be
But
happy
we can
to
just send it
join.
out without your signatures, that's okay. Whatever you want. We'll just send it out that way, that's fine. Then we don't
I'm
have
a
to-
sign it. So
I'll sign it.
I'll sign it.
Okay.
Put mine on right in the front with capital letters.
Joyce probably
There's
has
no rush.
those.
She can stamp them. Yeah.
I can do it.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, next up is the MG21 administrative contract. Do I hear a motion?
I move approval of the MG21 administrator contract as presented, as we discussed this previously.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, here's the young man.
Discussion items, facilities planning update.
Okay, so the written report, you see, is quite brief, you know, and we're just moving into getting ready for the construction phase, and so, take any questions?
We've received bids back, I guess you put for the new building. We've put out bids and we've received responses.
Yes.
Have we selected the winners of these processes yet?
We are almost complete.
You are almost complete.
Yep.
When we talked about this, back when we were selecting Findorf as a construction manager, it was my understanding that that bid process would be open and transparent. Because we have a decision, because Findorf is not a general contractor. They're a construction manager, and that, you know, these contracts is bidding out, we're responsible for it. Not Findorf as a general contractor, the construction manager. So what I'm asking is that I would like, we as a board should see these bids and what's coming in and look at the recommendations for the approval. Can we get that information, please?
So the plan is to bring it to the January board meeting for both new building and renovations.
Excellent.
And so.
Okay, excellent. Can you send that information out ahead of time, you know, reasonably ahead of time?
Should in board document.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Will you note which groups are union or not union?
We could attempt to. I won't necessarily know specifically. It's not a question that we asked when we sent the bids out, but we
Well,
definitely do our fair share, or a good attempt to do it.
Dean, why do you want to know the difference if it's union or not?
well, we often have union support of our schools in the legislature and a whole lot of other areas. I'd like to continue it.
Any more discussion, questions, anything?
I mean, well, to that end, we have received from the MGA representative, we have received a list of contractors in the area who they recommend because they're union contractors, and that's something we prepare if we choose.
About to get that.
Right,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Susan.
Do we have any updates, or are we just going to get those in January about the EA submissions to the Village of Cottage Grove on 12/6? And want to go out to the city of Monona plan.
Yeah, so the plans you've seen, and so we just need, because the one to the Village of Cottage Grove is for the addition at Glacial Drumlin, because it's an addition to the building that needs a separate approval.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's just that formality
It's
of
just
the
that
approval
piece, okay.
process. And then likewise with Winnequa, because there's a substantial amount of work being
Yes.
done there, it needs to go through city approval.
Okay.
I might add too, that generally labor unions have always been strong supporters of school aids and public schools in this state, and I think that much of we've been benefited by that over the years.
All right, thank you, everybody. Move on to future dates, meeting dates.
Okay.
Do we have policy down for the 19th?
I'm sorry I didn't put it down, but yes. It's not on this list, I apologize. I didn't update that on board next, but you do have it for next Thursday
so-
at 9.
Thanks, Pat.
What's next Thursday?
Policy,
December 19th is policy.
Yeah,
At 9 a.m.
Okay,
I'm sorry, it's not on your list.
that's okay. Maybe I could miss it.
Okay. And then the other one, I just want to note out to everyone's attention, you should have received an email about this, but in January, on the 15th, there'll be another opportunity with the Dane County, with all the member boards in Dane County. There'll be Equity Institute, and DeForest will be hosting this one. So as we get more specific information about that night and the agenda, we'll share it out. But if you get that on your calendars, that'll be an optional event for you to attend.
Will it be a different program, slightly different, or?
It'll be carrying kind of the next step, carrying off.
They do a
the first one.
great job.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, they were planning a makeup for this Wednesday, or excuse me, next Wednesday.
18th.
Yeah, for people that weren't able to attend the first one. Unfortunately, there weren't enough people to attend for them to host it, so they had to cancel.
And
I will need to know who's going so that I can register
Okay.
for that 15.
So has an email gone out with that information and asking for registration? All right, so we'll maybe send a reminder.
So if there was a link on the one that was sent, and I just registered through that,
Perfect.
is that okay to do that?
Perfect.
Okay.
When was
Thank
that? When was
Yes,
that?
I
What's the
didn't get
date?
to you
January
about,
15th.
Thursday, January 16th is a special meeting at the Nitty Gritty. It's my birthday.
So we can come and watch you drink your free beer.
Let Jason know we have a forum so we can notice
Oh,
it.
that night.
The wife will be driving. Okay.
Oh, no. Really?
So I'd like to have a motion to reconvene in the closed session.
So moved.
All right, any discussion?
We need a
We have
roll
to have
call
a
vote.
Roll call
again.
vote, starting with Dean.
Aye.
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 All right. We convene into closed session.